Hello and welcome to the Aggressive Optimism podcast with Jenna Edwards. That's me. I'm your host for this wonderful few minutes of optimism. And today I want to talk to you about a moment when I was in sixth grade and my whole world literally cracked open, you guys. Not dramatically, not with fireworks. It wasn't anything traumatic. It was just a guest speaker, an exchange student who came up and talked to us in my sixth grade class. See, I grew up in a farming community in a small town where everyone looked like me and most people's lives followed a very predictable path. And there's nothing inherently wrong with predictable, but even as a kid, I remember feeling like the edges of my world were so close. They were contained. Like I could see the outline of how things were supposed to go. So when my teacher said we were having a high school student come speak to our class, I was so curious. But when she started talking about being from a far off land, about living with a host family there in my small town, about a language that sounded nothing like ours, about food and traditions and cities I couldn't even picture, something happened in my body. It wasn't logical, it was physical. It felt like oxygen. You know, have you ever had those moments? Like someone opened a window in a room and I didn't realize it was stuffy. And I thought, oh, that's a door. That's how you leave. That's how you see the world. So when school ended, I ran home, y'all. And as most of you know, I'm not a runner. Literally, I joke that if you see me running, something's wrong and you should probably start running too. Or I only run when dinosaurs are chasing me. So imagine me as just like this little sixth grader running home. I ran into my house and I burst through the front door. And I literally said, I figured out what I'm going to do with my life. And my mom was like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, I'm going to be an exchange student. And my mom just giggled like, oh, that's cute. But she didn't realize I meant it, y'all. I really meant it. The next few years were all about that. Brochures, research, deadlines, saving money, conversations, right? The first year I was eligible to apply, I brought the brochure home and my mom said, maybe next year. And I was so heartbroken, but I was determined. So the following year, I brought home the brochure again. And again, she said, maybe next year. And I remember thinking, okay, we'll do next year. And if next year doesn't work, well, we'll try again. Because here's what I didn't know at the time, but I can see now. I don't quit easy. I really don't. I might get discouraged. I might get impatient. That's a definite, by the way. I might question my decisions, but ultimately, I'm a real stubborn person. So even when it's slow, even when it's inconvenient, even when it would be easier to say, fine, never mind, until eventually there are no more years, right? So I brought the brochure home and I was like, here we go. You have to say yes. And she did. And at 17, I stepped onto a plane. By the way, first time I ever flew, because no big deal. You go from not flying at all to flying, to Thailand. It's fine. Flew across the world. And here's the part that matters, y'all. It wasn't smooth. I was excited, but I was also terrified. I was super homesick and I was really overwhelmed. I honestly didn't speak a lick of Thai when I got on the plane. I mean, I talk about this all the time. I'm older than the internet. I don't know if many of you can relate to that, but I grew up in a town with 2006 people. They didn't have any books on Thai. When I got back from my trip, kids in my school were like, how's Taiwan? And I'm like, it's Thailand. And they're like, same thing. I'm like, it's a completely different country. But that just shows you the mindset of where I grew up and the access to things like a language class for a language that most people didn't even know existed. So anyway, I didn't speak the language. I remember being on the plane and asking the people around me how to say hello. And that's how I started. I didn't understand the social norms. I didn't know how to navigate everyday life without feeling like I was constantly getting it wrong. I mean, it's a completely different culture, right? But this is where I learned something about myself. I don't love transition, y'all. I love growth in theory. In practice, transition is really hard for me. It takes me a lot of time to acclimate. I adjust in layers. I question everything. I wonder if I made a mistake. But I don't leave. And that's the part. I don't always feel brave, but I stay. And staying in Thailand, even when it was uncomfortable, rewired something in me. It destroyed a belief, the belief that small towns determine your destiny. The belief that where you start is where you stay. The belief that life modeled around you is the only life available to you. Because once you've lived on the other side of the world, you can't unsee it. Once you've experienced a different way of being, you can't pretend your original environment is the only option. And here's what's subtle. Thailand didn't magically transform me into some fearless, adventurous person. It just gave me evidence. Evidence that there's always a way. Maybe not the obvious way. Maybe not the easy way. Maybe not the fast way, because it wasn't fast. But a way to get to where you want to go, right? And that's why I believe optimism, it doesn't look like positive thinking. It looks like persistence. It looks like staying with a decision long enough for it to become real. It looks like refusing to let maybe next year turn into never. And when I look back now, I can see the pattern starting there. You see the door. You feel the discomfort. You question it. You move anyway. That pattern shows up again and again in my life, and I imagine it shows up again and again in yours. In Japan, for me, in Los Angeles, and hiring mentors when I didn't know what I was doing, and producing my first film, and building a marriage intentionally. Y'all, it's not luck. It's a decision. And here's what I want us to sit with for a second. Where in your life have you seen a door and quietly told yourself it's unrealistic? Where have you felt that little surge in your chest and then talked yourself out of it because it looks hard? Hard doesn't mean impossible. It means it requires commitment. You don't need the whole map. I didn't have a master plan. I had a brochure, a literal brochure, and a decision, and years of staying with it. Y'all, that's aggressive optimism. It's not hype. It's not delusion. Just sustained commitment to possibility. So if you're feeling small right now, geographically, professionally, emotionally, maybe you don't need to blow up your whole life. Maybe you just need to find a brochure, your version of a door, and take one step toward it. Okay, thanks for listening. Please follow the show. Leave a review. It's so helpful. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that small isn't permanent. It's just where you're starting. Until next time, go be realistic. And by realistic, I mean optimistic. And let's do this. Okay, bye.